everybody. Welcome. So we're streaming again today. This is Captain Thoughts, Pastor Thomas, and I'm here with Chris. How you doing today?
I'm doing good.
That's good. Did you have a good Easter?
I did. I did. I
Yeah, it was
actually
good.
I avoided everybody like the antisocial guy I am. I just went
Oh,
and had dinner by myself over at Carrabba's.
well, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, I had a good Easter too. So we were with family, had a good service, and of course, I was able the week before. The reason why I wasn't streaming last week, we were able to go down and see my family. So they were able to see my daughter, and we had a good time down there. So I actually had a chance to watch The Sandlot with my dad. He had never seen The Sandlot before. You know, it's probably one of those things to where like it had been playing at our house in the background, but he just had caught clips of it. But he ended up liking it. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Yeah,
Um,
Christmas I do a ton of stuff with people, but like other holidays, I usually just I just want a day off. Like just leave me alone.
yeah, well, to be honest with you, I don't know. It's tough doing like going down there on Holy Week. That was pretty tough because we got back Wednesday and then Thursday, like boom, getting right into there with Monday, Thursday, and then Good Friday. We had the Easter egg hunt at the church Saturday, and then of course Easter Sunday. So it ended up being it was a lot. It was a good week, but like last night. I was just worn out. Like after we got my daughter to bed, I don't know. I was doing something and I was like, man, I'm pretty tired. I think I might go to bed. I look at it and it's 9:30. I'm like, oh my gosh, come on now. But I was just tired from everything. It was a long drive. It's about 4.5 hours where my parents live, so one way. That's a long trip there and back. But it was good.
Yeah, I can't drive more than I like driving because I'm in a rural area. I'm just used to driving places, but I can't go more than like three before I start to like just get miserable.
Yeah, well, and of course, they're doing a whole lot of work on the interstate right now. They're trying to expand it, and it's like right where I live and right where my parents live are where they're doing the heaviest work. So it's real bad when you start leaving, and then it's real bad right when you're getting close to your destination. The rest of it's not too bad, but just it's like right when you're ready to be home, you're like, come on. But oh well. But so today. We're going to be talking a couple of different topics. I want to talk a little bit about the kind of new breed, I guess, of Christian grifters that we're kind of seeing developing in the online space, and kind of talking a little bit about that and some of the news that's been kind of happening around people like that. And kind of contrasting them a little bit with sort of the older Christian. Like most people familiar nowadays, with like your Joel Osteens or your panhandlers, televangelist, right, who will use Jesus' name to basically say, give me money. But, and, somewhat with talk radio show hosts, right, where they'll be like, well, Jesus, 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 but then, they don't really do anything that's like Christian at all. And, I guess sort of the new, I guess the next generation of that kind of same thing, where, you got people who will talk about Jesus a whole lot as more just a marketing gimmick rather than any kind of actual faith. And of course, again, none of this is like meant to be condemning of anybody. None of this is meant to be, whatever, throwing stones. It's just something to watch out for and recognize, you can like somebody, you can agree with a lot of what they say, and still recognize that, they're using Jesus's name more as a marketing ploy than anything actually serious.
Yeah, with a lot of people, it's a grift. I mean, I've been watching a lot of coverage of the America First guys and Ethan Ralph and stuff like that, and Ralph is just imploding right now. He's going into that spiral of like people are making fun of me and I'm going to react poorly to it, which will make more people make fun of me. I don't know why. I don't know why so many people can't seem to get out of that spiral, but he's trapped in that, and it's been really interesting to watch. But there's definitely, especially with America First, these on the one hand they claim to be all about traditional values, and we're super Catholic even, and we're gonna but I mean, you got guys like Baked Alaska in there, who is one of the worst degenerates you can find. Um, uh, Beardson Beardley, who's basically up there too. And then you got Nick Fuentes going on about like, you know, don't you should be an incel and don't kiss a girl. And it's not even like anything close to Christian chastity. It's something akin to a 5-year-old thinking girls are icky, which, given the closet homosexual rumors around Nick, maybe he thinks that. But it's just, it's a whole just gross scene. And then these guys are all going on about Christ is king, and
So
I
how
mean,
do you
I
think
don't claim to be a particularly good Christian myself, but that's the point. I don't claim to be a particularly good Christian. These are people that use. It's like Christianity is just is just a reason to something to hit their political enemies over the head with, and nothing more.
So how do you think how do they seem to get away with this with their audiences, right? Because like in older generations, you could kind of tell, but like they would try to hide it a little bit. Like again, it could come out, like especially with like a lot of preachers, it could come out in their preaching. With talk radio hosts, you could kind of hear it sometimes if they'd go off on rants, where they'd get a little bit more uncontrolled. But I feel like for older people, there was much more of a desire to really hide it, and a lot of this was stuff that would come out, as their whole lives kind of unraveled, But for a lot of these newer guys, it sort of seems like a lot of this is just sort of put on their sleeves, and so people are kind of like hearing these two very opposed things at the same time. But then they're just kind of their fans just kind of hold them both together.
Well, I mean, part of it is they're less professional, and people that watch it understand they're less professional. So, they're going to be more raw and open. That's kind of, I guess you'd say, an excuse. A big part of it, though, is simply especially with Nick Fuentes, we're talking about a guy that has primarily high school and perhaps even middle school audience when you get right down to it. Or adults that are still trapped in that mindset. These are naive kids that haven't done anything, so I mean that's part of it right there. Beyond that, though, I don't know. I really don't understand why at this point anybody takes Nick Fuentes seriously, or Baked Alaska, or Beardson Beardley, or Ethan Ralph. That boggles my mind at this point.
Yeah, I'm wondering what was the appeal. Like, I mean, obviously sometimes they'd be saying things that maybe every once in a while I'd agree with, but it seemed like there was a lot of other people who were saying very, very similar things, but they weren't sort of going down the same path. I mean, again, like the immigration issue, right? Like we both agree immigration's a problem. Nobody wants, just open borders, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people saying that. Do you think was it that they were saying this stuff first, or is it how they're saying it? What do you think is the appeal? I know they're very different people. Like Bake Alaska presents himself very differently than like a Nick Fuentes or a Beardson Beardley. So what do you think is drawing people in? And how does Christianity sort of play into that?
Bake has no audience at this point, so there's that. It's questionable how much of an audience these guys have. There's a lot of accusations that much of Cozy TV has bought it. It's very easy to inflate numbers. I mean, literally, you can, if you're watching a Cozy TV stream, you can just open it up in multiple tabs, at least as of a few weeks ago, and those just count as multiple views. So it's questionable how much of an audience Nick even has at this point. But a lot of it is just, again, appealing to that smarmy teenager arrogance that so much of his younger fans have. And I mean, to some extent, that can be a good thing. It can be a youthful energy kind of thing. I actually really liked a couple of years ago when Fuentes was sending fans to go to Charlie Kirk rallies and ask him, why do we have to send all this money to Israel? And they didn't have an answer other than calling you an anti-Semite. That was really funny. There was a lot of really funny moments that came out of that. And it's a good question that those, conservative Inc. didn't have a real answer for. So there's that kind of youthful energy appeal, I guess. But, I mean, there's also something to be said for paying your dues. I don't understand wanting to take seriously somebody who thinks they have all the mysteries of the world unraveled when they've never kissed a girl or had a job. Like at a certain point, like you haven't lived your life to any extent. Like I don't know why I need to listen to you.
Yeah, there does seem to be a real lack of experience there, and that is gonna color your perception of things and how you think things should go. If you don't know what it's, again, not saying that experience is the end all be all, but there are some things to where if you have really no experience of it and you've not talked to anybody who can give you that experience, you're going to look at it very differently.
I mean, there's something valuable to that youthful perspective. I realize teenagers are all arrogant and they think they have the world figured out. And I was 17, 18, 19 once. I remember that. But there is also something to that youthful, fresh perspective. I said to you a while ago, I was like, one of the sad things about how polarized this country has become is that, people with different temperaments and perspectives need each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not trying to completely dismiss like, oh, you're 17. I don't ever have to listen to you. But at the same time, it's like, you're also 17.
Right, like just because you're 17 doesn't mean that gives you some sort of privilege that older people don't have, or not privilege, but amazing insight that no one's ever thought of before.
And especially with a lot of I think with a lot of the Fuentes guys, I saw that video that was making the rounds on Twitter. It was when he and his like merry band of dorks were trying to like storm into CPAC or something, I think last summer. And, somebody was filming it. And I mean, this was quite the collection of dorks. I don't know how else to put it. And you could kind of see a lot of these guys were probably kind of lonely and we're just happy to be fitting in. I'm not trying to be mean, but like, I'm really trying to be on my best behavior on Tom's channel here. But clearly that's an element of this, And I get it to some extent. I was very interested in politics when I was a teenager. I got very interested like around 15. And yeah, I knew exactly how the world worked at 17. I was quite sure of it. But, I also had friends that kept me grounded. And, I had a girlfriend that would occasionally tell me, you talk too much. You know what I mean? Like, these guys, they don't have that. They don't have an older brother to like, put him in a headlock once in a while and tell him to stop being a dork. They don't have any of that, it seems, and that doesn't go well for somebody. I think a lot of them probably don't have a strong father figure.
Do you think there's I don't know, as I'm listening to you, right, I'm thinking about some of the people who kind of go down all these really weird rabbit holes, from people kind of are more on the left perspective, right, and all that kind of stuff. And they sort of seem to have similar temperaments as a lot of people who get wrapped up in the kind of the Nick Fuentes thing, I guess. Again, I hate to do the whole, the horseshoe thing or whatever, but it does sort of seem like that, temperaments, people who maybe are, don't have a lot of friends or loneliness, that they're going to be drawn to some of these more kind of crazy views, and it's kind of like what shade is it going to have, or what kind of cutout is it going to have? One's more of a progressive feminist, all that kind of stuff cut out, and then the other one's sort of more traditionalist Christian kind of cut out. And maybe that, I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, is that kind of a fair kind of comparison?
Oh yeah, there's I would say these kind of fringe political takes, right or left. I mean, you usually look at one of these guys and you're going to see somebody that probably has no father figure. Probably is not very successful with the opposite sex. Probably doesn't have a lot of close in real life friends. You're going to see somebody without a great deal of strong social connections. And yeah, okay, a lot of them are awkward and, maybe they've got the tism, maybe they're kind of a dork, but like, okay, I've known a lot of people that were like that. I was quite the dork myself, but like, you know, I didn't I didn't go join Owen Benjamin's cult, and you know, like I I had those other connections that kept you grounded, like, and I don't think a lot of these guys have that, and I think that's just they're a lot of these kind of online cult personalities end up devolving into I need a daddy to tell me what to do, or you know some sort of identity politics where you're convinced, on the left, it's often some identity politics where you're convinced that all your problems are because, you know, insert whatever evil group is keeping your group down. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to like they don't have any friends. They don't have, you know,
I think kind of what you're saying too, though. Especially identity, I think is a real thing. The search for identity, right? I mean, again, left or right, because they're really emphasizing these things about identifying themselves, right? All of these sort of external things. Nothing's really again, on the left, right? It's whatever, non-binary, all this, pansexual, whatever, right? I'm black, or mix, or all, right? It's very substantive stuff. And then over here on the right side, it's stuff that sounds substantive, right? Well, I'm traditionalist, or I'm Christian, but then in reality, though, it has no substance. Like, it's because it's very much, a lot of it seems to be just sort of dropped at a hat. You're not really traditionalist. I'm traditionalist, but here, let me go. But I'm not really. I don't really want a wife. I'm doing nothing to actually have a wife or child. But I'm going to say I'm traditionalist. I'm a Christian, but I've zero involvement in a church. Don't know anything about the Bible. I have all kinds of beliefs about Jesus that are maybe consistent with anything that, or not, that's with Orthodox Christianity. But really, I mean, in many ways, what it defines to be Christian, nothing like that. But I'm going to claim that kind of title. And so it sounds like to me, a lot of this is just about finding identity, but it's from external things. There's nothing internal that's driving their identity.
I mean, a lot of it's contrarian too. Like, it's you're going against the culture. I'm the edgy traditionalist monarch Christian, so I'm edgy is what it was. And teenagers always appeals to them. Ironically enough, claiming to be a traditionalist Christian at this point is a way of saying "F you, society."
Right.
But it's about as substantive as 20 years ago, somebody that was a punk because they bought a lot of gear at Hot Topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So again, it's still this idea of identity, but then why does their identity get wrapped up? And we've kind of talked about this some. I'm just wanting to go a little bit more in depth, I guess. And why does their identity seem to become more around I follow this person, or I've got sort of these external things, rather than something that's a little bit more meaningful?
Well, I mean, the cult of personality stuff again is because they don't have any friends. They don't have a lot of them. I mean, obviously I'm generalizing, but they don't have a girlfriend. They don't have a lot of close friends. Absentee or weak father figure, no older brothers. They don't have any of that, and so it's like, well, now Nick Fuentes is your daddy, or Jordan Peterson is your daddy, or whoever. You're going to follow somebody. And again, I don't even think Jordan Peterson is that much of a grifter. I have issues with Jordan Peterson, but I don't really think he's a full-on grifter. But the point is, he said some very basic life advice, like, clean your room and, go take a shower. And a lot of these guys just didn't have a dad to tell them that,
Yeah,
so it was just groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, say
so
what you
how
will
come
about
friendships
Jordan
don't
Peterson,
form in
but
these groups then, though? Why would you say?
I repeat the question there. I didn't hear.
So why don't friendships though seem to form within these groups? Like sometimes they do, but it seems like a lot of times people tend to get more isolated when they start going down, like when they start getting real involved with these cult of personalities, rather than more connected. All right, I mean, if you got a bunch of people following Nick Fuentes, why aren't friends being made sort of around Nick Fuentes?
Well, I mean, you can make friends online, but it's obviously more difficult if you're not around somebody. If your friend is on the other side of the continent, that can make things difficult. But also, like, that's no basis to form a friendship.
Right.
Like, you can't, oh, we're going to form a deep, lasting friendship because we both got suckered by the same closet homosexual online. I don't think is a good basis for a friendship.
I mean, I don't know. We're friends.
I'm going to pretend I don't get that joke. Um, but no, that's not, oh, well, we both embarrassed, we both became a meme because we embarrassed ourselves at CPAC isn't necessarily the strongest bond for a friendship there. Um, and a lot of these guys, they don't know how to be friends. I mean, again, they never really had a lot of these connections, and you know, that I've dealt with some people online in my travels online, and I'm usually very sympathetic and patient with it because I know what it's like to be kind of dorky and awkward. But I've dealt with some guys online where it's just like you just have no social skills, like just none.
Why do you think? I mean, is there something in the culture, or is this just seems to be something with people? Like, do you see this as a problem that's getting worse as time goes by, or do you see this as something that online is just kind of bringing more attention to it,
I
or a
think
little bit
it's
of
getting
both?
worse, and I think the online obviously magnifies it. But yeah, I think a lot of times it's just a lack of father figure is one of the big ones. Um, or no strong connection to a big brother or older cousin kind of figure. Like there's just no older male figure in their life to kind of take them under their wing for a lot of these guys, and and then they can't. For whatever reason, it seems a little bit more difficult for these Zoomers to pair bond and to find the opposite sex and hook up. I don't understand that. I grew up in a time where it was exceedingly easy. Um, but it doesn't seem to be for them for whatever reason. That's a whole another can of worms. But point is, they don't have a girlfriend, they don't have a lot of close friends, and they don't have a dad. And those things just don't work out well for them. And a lot of them, they're not involved in a local church. I mean, for as much as they claim to be Christian, you know, go maybe try going to your church once in a while, um, instead of watching Nick Fuentes play Fortnite. Uh,
Yeah.
that might help, but you don't really do that. And again, no older figures there to tell them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to play armchair psychologist. I'm just asking, just in terms of an opinion. Do you think amongst a lot of these people that there's a bit of a fear of commitment with that? Because like watching Nick Fuentes, right, or being just online, you can pretty much drop that easily, and there's really no ramifications, right? It's very easy to keep people at a distance. You don't really have to be committed, don't really have to be intimate with them, not in the sexual way, but I mean like getting to know them, right? But in person, there people do see you more. If you're not there, if you've made, if you've been going there for a while, if you're not there, a lot of times your absence will be noticed. A lot of times, people can see you, they can talk to you, and they'll see who you are, right? So they'll your flaws included. So do you think that some of this here is that they're afraid there's a fear of that, there's a fear of people sort of seeing who they are, flaws and everything, and so that causes them to want to keep people at a distance, which then in turn means that they don't really ever form any kind of meaningful connections.
I mean, that could definitely be part of it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys got picked on when they were younger, and they're afraid to reach out for these social connections. I mean, that could definitely be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, just from well, again, like from my own experience, right? Like you know, I don't talk about, like, with a lot of people around here. Like, I don't talk about like, I'll talk about comics with you, but like I don't do that with a lot of people around here. It's something that I'm like, it takes me a long time to really warm up to somebody before I'll start going into that. Because when I was little, like back when I was a kid, if you liked Star Trek, that was, you got picked on for that. So I sort of learned right at an early age, like, okay, if I'm gonna have friends, I can't talk about this. I can still like it, but I can't talk about it with other guys, because then that's just gonna lead to getting picked on. So it kind of led to me, having to very carefully select what there's some things that I can, have with friends, but then I had to develop other interests so that way I could have other friends. And that's why I just wonder here if that's something similar, but they kind of took that, like, I did that. That was like one specific thing with me, right? Because again, no, if you like Star Trek, you were just considered a dork. If that they've taken that same thing and just kind of applied it to just kind of their whole life, you know what I mean?
I think there's something positive. I mean, I'm not trying to strictly defend the concept of bullying, but there's something positive to the idea that, like, you, especially when you're kind of a nerdy guy, you can't get too obsessed with something.
Oh no, I agree.
Like, you have to learn, because, like, even if it's something where it's like nobody's gonna call you a dork for it. Like, I think we've all known, say, like, a car guy, and they can't talk about anything but like their Camaro that they've tricked out or something, and it's like those people are boring. Like, learning to talk about multiple things, learning to have a variety of interests is a pretty big thing to becoming a friend. And, you know, so yeah, being like, oh, all I can talk about is weird, esoteric, far right politics and maybe some sort of anime, this probably isn't gonna make you the life of the party.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. Like I'm not like, again, I wasn't saying that to be like poor pitiful me. I
Well,
do
no,
think it was good because it forced me to learn and develop other interests and hobbies. But
yeah,
again,
I
I
got
think just
into
some people can
hockey and
take that
basketball.
though and go too far with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got into hockey and basketball as a kid just because, like, everyone else only wanted to talk about sports ball. So I found the ones that I found the least boring and could actually watch a game, and latched onto those.
Right.
And I don't have the attention span to get through a football or baseball game, but hockey and basketball is a lot more fast paced. So yeah, I'll watch those with my buddies.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. It became something that I wouldn't have sought out myself, but I did genuinely enjoy it for a while. So again, having different people around you with different interests is good. It broadens you. Um,
So do you think that the internet in some ways has kind of hindered that maybe? Because like nowadays it's very easy to find people who just have the same interests that you have and to talk about that. So rather than expanding your horizons and pursuing other interests, you can just keep, you can get four or five interests and just keep reinforcing that with people that you're with.
I think there's definitely a lot of, especially these younger guys, and I hate to sound boomerish here, but they're spending entirely too much time online.
Yeah.
There's entirely too much screen time, and it's like, okay. And again, there should be a parental figure that steps in and says, when they're younger, and says, okay, put the phone away for a while, you know, go,
Yeah.
go outside, touch grass, talk to a girl. Like, I mean, that all sounds like really cliche and stuff. Like, I had a buddy of mine that's kind of antisocial, and he came to me. He's wanting advice. He's all depressed and angry all the time, and he's like, "And don't just tell me to go get a girlfriend." And I'm like, "Okay, but yeah, you should probably do that." I don't know what.
Well, Chris, I told you I'm already married. I can't just go get a girlfriend. Jeez.
But no, I'm like, you're 22. You need a girlfriend. I don't know what to tell you. You're at an age where, I would have been depressed and angry too if I was in your position at that age. I don't know. I know a lot of it sounds basic. I know a lot of it sounds like a cliche, but yeah, go touch grass, go kiss a girl, go get a job, go clean your room. I mean, a lot of that's kind of a lot of that sounds very cliche, but like, yeah, go do
But
this.
then we're not doing that. That's the thing, is a number of people aren't doing just the basics. You're not getting to the basics, so they're not doing it.
And again, these are the people that have latched onto some cringe philosophy, and they think that they can remake the world to be a better place, and it's like, well, try making your bed first.
Right.
I know that's all clear. I know it sounds like a Jordan Peterson meme, but there's truth to it. I mean,
No, well, I mean, I'm really like one of my favorite quotes now is becoming everybody wants to be a part of the revolution, but nobody wants to wash the dishes.
yeah.
And I mean, because again, it's a lot of truth, right? Oh, we're gonna change the world. Okay, but I mean, dishes still got to be done. Someone's got to do that, It's just the basic stuff, and just living your life. I don't know.
I mean, to one of these like young men that's like wanting to follow like, I mean, there's really disturbing stuff coming out of AF. If anybody that's listening to this, if you haven't listened to like,
what's some of the stuff?
okay, so like for example, one of these guys, Dalton, he does a stream, and look, I understand that you're an entertainer, you're a streamer, but see that's the thing. AF guys want to have it both ways. They're serious political movement, but they're also just entertainers.
Right.
And you're pulling that shady Jon Stewart in the 2000s thing where it's like you need to pick a lane. All right. But okay, fine. So this Dalton guy does a stream where he decides he wants to tell a story of how he crapped his pants. And the reason he crapped his pants is because he was so enthralled with some video game that he just sat there and crapped his pants while playing it, which is just disturbing.
Why would you share that story?
Like he's telling a story of crap, and I'm thinking like he's going to tell a story of when he was like sick and he had a stomach bug or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess he's too young to have been drinking, but I got too drunk or something. You know what I mean? Something like that. And that's what I'm expecting to hear. Not just I was so enthralled with a video game. I just said like that's just disturbing. But then a bunch of other people call into a show and start telling equally disturbing stories, and I'm like, wow, the optics. Good Lord.
And see, I guess this is where I'm going to have my boomer moment, because I don't get the whole thing of posting stuff online in the first place. Like, I guess I can kind of get like the pictures as sort of a digital cloud or something, but I'm like, I don't think that people care,
I mean,
like,
if you're trying to be an entertainer,
but why would you post negative stuff like that?
I understand if you're trying to be an entertainer, posting self-deprecating stories where it's like, oh, look at this time I was an idiot. Let's all laugh. Okay, you're a jester. You're trying to be that, fine. But I wasn't laughing. I was listening to this and I'm like, oh, good God. Like, oh my, what is wrong with you? But that's these guys. A lot of them are kind of messed up, and a lot like this is, and again, like Nick Fuente stuff is like, don't love a woman, don't kiss a girl, don't date a girl. Dating a girl is gay. If you should marry a girl. I'm not kidding. Being romantically interested in a girl is gay, and it's being a simp. If you love your wife or your girlfriend, you're a simp. Like, you should just find a girl and only be interested in making children for the next generation. And he talks about it like, when I get married, I'll do my husbandly duties and make children. Like it's some sort of terrible burden. Like, oh no, I had to make love to my wife. What a terrible thing. Like, but that's how he talks. And again, at best you could say like, is this guy like, did something wrong with him? Is he still like a 5-year-old that thinks girls have cooties? At worst, you could say that he's just outright a closet homo, which there's no small amount of evidence for that.
A lot of that he posts himself.
Yeah, I mean, there's more video evidence of this guy going on dates with a dude than being at church. But no, you hear him talk about this stuff, and it's like, look, this isn't like red pilled. This isn't like, this is you just hate women. Like, there's no getting around it. I know that's something that's been overused, misogynies, but yeah, you just hate women, don't you?
I mean, again, just like there's times to where there are women who legitimately hate men, there are some men who legitimately just hate women. And I mean, it's a thing that can be there. God, that's so bizarre. I mean,
It's so
again,
weird.
like
Like I
there's a
said,
difference between, again, being an actual simp versus like being romantic. Like I
well,
don't
I
think anyone
mean,
says like James Bond's a simp.
you almost had the opposite end of this, where like Nick is pretending to be all Christian chastity about it. Like, I have no interest in sex because I'm more, I, I'm ascendant. He literally said at one point, I'm closer to the angels than man.
Oh,
Uh, but and you
excuse
could
me, I
say
just
maybe
threw
he's
up in my
being
mouth.
sarcastic or being ironic, but probably not. Um, but you kind of had almost the flip side of that with the manosphere, where it's like, you know, all I'm interested in is sex and women. I don't value women at all behind that. Pump them and dump them, that kind of stuff.
And
But
see,
like
both
in
of those
both
to me sound like
cases, yeah, I'm hearing somebody that's never been in love. I'm hearing somebody
I'm
that's
hearing someone who's had very, very little experience with women. Like it seems like the most experience you've had with a woman is the click of your mouse.
pretty much. I mean, when I think back to like past girlfriends, and I'm feeling a little sentimental, and I'm kind of missing them. And don't get me wrong, I'll think about the reasons they are past girlfriends eventually. But when I'm having those moments of missing them, it's not all that often that I'm kind of thinking about, in the bedroom with them. It's more I'm thinking about like, oh man, remember when we were hanging out, renting movies and playing N64. That like
Oh yeah, nah, yeah, I
I,
remember.
I, I, I really don't understand these guys, and a lot of them, like I said, they just never been in love. They never, you know, and it's a little bit sadder in some ways with the Manosphere guys because it's like 40-year-olds that are going on about this instead of like 19-year-olds, but it's still in both cases really sad. And this is not anything that starts a movement. This is like, oh yeah, America First is a movement, and it's a bowel movement at this point. Like there's not, yeah, there's no serious, and a lot of these kids get sucked into it, and they think, oh yeah, we're gonna reform the GOP from the inside or something. It's like, no, you're not.
But you're going to reform it into what? That's the thing. Is what are you? Even if you were to succeed, what are you forming it into?
I mean, there's a
You're not
far
going to
right.
reform it into anything worth being. I mean, this is what's happened to the left. Is they've, because again, a lot of the movements there started from the same kind of bitter place, and so as they've reformed the left, it's just been devastating.
There's a congressman, Gosar, I think his name is, a very far right congressman, and he ended up cozying up to America First for a little while because he just thought, oh, this is like a dissident right youth movement, and then he kind of observed it more and just immediately was like, I got nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
Like, like no, I have nothing to do with this.
And
And
see, it's sad, right? On the one hand, I don't mean to be like with this hints, but like it's dumb that there has to be an America First movement because like the whole starting like what it's become is kind of stupid, but the whole premise that the politicians should consider the interest of their country first, like that's just supposed to be a given, you know. But I mean, because
oh
that's
yeah,
really
America First
that's
is a
where
great idea.
yeah, I
Before
mean
Nick
that's the thing is
Fuentes
that's where it
turned it into
started.
whatever this is.
Right now, it's become just this other just abomination. And like so many of these things, it's God.
I mean, look, there's a lot of you could have a lot of tinfoil hattery that there's shady individuals, with power and money, and perhaps both that are using Nick Fuentes as a honeypot. I mean, there's no small amount of evidence for that. Um, a lot of these guys are guys like Baked Alaska, for example, is somebody that was at the whole January 6th thing and somehow didn't really do any jail time for that. This is it's probably a honeypot in my humble opinion.
I mean, I'm
Um,
sure there's some is, but then in some cases though, it's not necessary. You can just sort of trace how it can just kind of be corrupted over time, just how it just gets twisted.
well, I
I mean,
often wonder, like, because there's kind of this point where like everything started to shift in America First. Like again, 3 years ago, like 2019, he's going after. All these guys are going after Charlie Kirk. They're going after Conservative Inc. They're asking them questions they can't answer. You know, Dan Crenshaw, you know, would have a tear in his one eye if you just mentioned Nick Fuentes. Like a lot of these guys were running a little scared, and all of a sudden, Nick like instantly just dropped the Israel stuff and started going on about we should ban porn out of nowhere. But even then started to like really go double down and like, oh, and also to all my followers, like, you know, loving a woman is simp. You should just not have anything to do with women at all. It just started getting really, I hate to use the word, but toxic. It just started getting to like, and I often wondered, did like somebody with power and money sit Nick down and say, look, we got stuff on you, you know, this is what you're going to do now.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean, and I don't know. You know, again, it's hard to know with a lot of this stuff. I mean, to me, it could be a combination. I'm sure there are some people who are involved in this, and like I said, yeah, are trying to create a honeypot. But then I think there could just be a number of other people who it's happened organically. I mean,
Medicare had the theory because now Cozy is like it brought Destiny in, and he's like a far left guy.
Cozy.
Cozy is the streaming platform Nick owns.
Ah.
Because he's been banned off everything. But somehow Cozy also is able to use payment processors, which little makes me raise an eyebrow. Medicare's theory was that he just wants to bring in a whole bunch of people all of a sudden, inflate the numbers, and sell Cozy off to some venture capitalist for X amount of money. Like that's Nick's plan. And I'm like, that might be it.
I mean,
it's hard to say because, like, obviously, what they claim they're doing is not what they're doing. Yeah. So it's hard to say what exactly is going on there.
So what advice would you give to people to look out for when you see someone who because I mean, would you acknowledge that there are people, maybe not in like the AF movement, but just like online people who do legitimately believe what they're pushing for, whether it's on the right or Christianity, that kind of stuff? Like, would you say, do you think that they're all just kind of grifters, or do you think there are people who actually do have real beliefs and they're putting them out there?
I mean, yeah, I think some of them are real. And look, if you're doing it full time as a job, you have to have, I guess, a little bit of the grift. You have to take sponsors. You have to be throwing out MyPillow promo codes or whatever you're doing. And, you got to get the bag.
Shadow Legends?
Yeah, you got to get the bag into a little bit. I understand that. You got to be a little bit patient with that kind of stuff. People got to
make sure that you've got a VPN.
Yeah. I mean, people got to eat. Man doesn't live by bread alone, but he doesn't live without
I mean, I'm not knocking that, right?
So, I mean, there's always got to be a little bit of the hustle. So you don't be like one of these purists where like, oh, they took a sponsor, they're compromised. Like, okay, like you got to live in the real world about it. But like, yeah, a lot of them do believe what they're doing. I don't know, man. I would just say, like, to any like parents, especially, if you got like a teenager or if you just have a younger cousin that you see falling into some of this stuff, like, you got to be anchored in the real world here. A lot of stuff works in theory, and that's how you get these fringe political ideas. I mean, a lot of stuff works in theory, but it doesn't work in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be what I would say is, how much of this you're hearing online and, these ideas that are being said actually apply the moment that you shut your phone off or you turn off your computer. Like when you walk away, when you're not in that digital world, how much of this stuff really applies there? And, that'll kind of give you a good idea about how people are communicating truth versus who's just getting off into like, the theory in the ivory tower with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like, oh, I want to, and again, a lot of these guys that go into like far Catholicism or Orthodoxy or something because they want the contrarian take almost, but it's like, try going to church. You know what I mean? Like, and don't isolate yourself too much. I understand, like, look, I'm the kind of guy that likes to be by myself a good amount. I'm an only child. I always had friends, but I had a small group of close friends, So I like a good amount of solitude. You know, I mean, literally, my Easter treat this weekend was everybody leave me alone this weekend, please. You know, because sometimes I need that, but I also know I could fall too much into that. Um, so you know, I don't know what else to say, but like a lot of these kids, and it's mostly kids that fall into this. Like you know, you need family, you need friends, you need a social connection. You need to go to, if you're a Christian, then you should be going to church. You know, you should
Yeah,
be
because I mean,
making connection with other believers. I mean, at the very least, like how many close Christian friends do you have? You know what I mean? Like
yeah, and I
maybe
would
you're
say, I
in
mean,
between churches or something, but how many close Christian brothers and sisters do you have?
and I say along with that, right? Like, these connections are not the connections that can be dropped at the, or can be dropped at the drop of a hat, right? So I mean, like, okay, you go to church, pastor says something that upsets you, but you're not, then you're not just going and looking for another church. If something happens at church and whatever, there's an argument or something, so then you're not just leaving it. Like, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go here and I'm going to stay here. And there's, it's gonna take a lot to really get me to leave. I'm going to have a friendship, and I'm going to maintain that friendship. If we get into an argument, it's not that we're just going to stop talking to each other. Well, that's just it. I'm just done with you. It's
I wash
actually
my hands.
committed. Yeah, I mean, well, right, and that's the thing, right? I mean, to kind of mention that when that happened, that let me know, okay, like there was no real friendship. Because it's just one argument. If you can just drop it in one argument, then there really is no friendship there. The friendship was just a whatever. It was a front. So I mean, you're actually forming a friendship that can deal with things like that. Not everything has to be perfect all the time. Same thing's true for church and in a family. And everything's going to be perfect in your church. Your church will do things that'll bug you, that'll upset you, that'll annoy you. They'll go a direction, and again, they can go down a direction too much. Obviously, I mean, there's a limit that you can put up with.
Yeah, there's
But
times
that
you gotta be ready to drop something.
right, but I mean, that doesn't need to be your first impulse.
I mean,
You
there's
know,
times at a job you got to look at your boss and say, "No, you can take this job and kindly restaff it." Um, but you can't be the kind of guy that does that every time a boss irritates you. You know what I mean? You have to know where your line is, but you have to be smart where you draw it.
exactly.
And
And
the other thing, like with a lot of this culture war stuff, I got to bring this up because I'm not going to name names, but it's somebody I know who also does videos. So I'm on Twitter and I'm with my pen name, my mysterious pen name that no one knows and you can't prove otherwise. But I'm making fun of I'm just kind of ripping on Jack Posobiec a little bit because he's out there doing the for that Florida anti-grooming bill. He's out there like going hard on Disney, and Disney's a bunch of groomers. And yeah, there's problems at Disney, but he's all like, he's selling it's like the Disney logo, but it says groomers. He's selling all these shirts and he's going off about don't you watch a Disney movie anymore? And it's like, what do you want me to do, Jack? You want me to go watch Kirk Cameron movies on PureFlix? Like, I'm sorry, I'm enjoying Moon Knight on Disney Plus. I don't know what to tell you. But I made the joke where I'm like, I was like Donald Trump Jr. as a tweet where he says don't take your kids to Disneyland this year, take them camping. And I was just like, imagine you're like 6 or 7 and your parents told you we're going to Disney World in the summer, right? You're so excited. And then they tell you that, no, we're actually just going to go camping because mom and dad want a virtue signal about some culture war that you neither understand nor care about. Just imagine being that kid. You know what I mean? Or I tweeted out the Jack Posobiec shirt, and I was like, I just picture some little girl watching in horror as her dad wearing this T-shirt is throwing all her Frozen dolls in the trash. I was just making jokes about these people that go off too much about this kind of stuff, that just lose their minds, wanting to, I don't know what else to call it, virtue signal. And then I get this other guy that's putting videos online about oh, you're being a wimp. You have to stand up for the culture war. And I'm like, you got to live your life at a certain point.
well, I mean, no, you do, and I think
Like,
again, this is
I
where
understand wanting to take a stand. I'm
yeah,
not trying to dismiss that, but
no, but I mean, I think for me, I just wanted to get this point. To me, that's a decision though that has to be made almost on an individual, or you could say on a family basis. So like if I wanted to say for my family, you know what, look, we're done with Disney. I mean, I think that's okay, but it's not okay for me to tell you you need to be done with Disney. If you wanted to make that stand, say, you know what, look, I'm not going to watch Disney more. I'm going to drop Moon Knight because of whatever. That's up to you. But
That's
you don't need
fine.
to be
Like
me,
I said,
yeah.
I just feel like there's a lot of virtue signaling.
No,
I
there
feel like
is.
with a lot of these people, it's like I wanna be able to tell people on Twitter
Yeah,
that I
I
dropped my.
don't watch Disney anymore. Well, and it's the same thing with public schooling. Like I hear this all the time. I see this in my feed all the time. Get your kids out of public schools. They're going to the 8-hour indoctrination facilities and everything. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of problems with public schools, and there have been a lot of problems with public schools. And I'm not like defending the public schools here, but to be honest, I think when I think back though to a lot of the ideas that I had growing up that were just nonsense, they weren't coming from the public school system.
But yeah, I was mostly just making fun of the guys that they're just so far. Like everything is the culture war with them. You know what I mean?
All right.
Like
Well,
again, what did we talk about earlier? Maybe you should be able to talk about multiple things.
yeah.
So like remember that Alan Keyes politician that like every time you heard him on the TV, he steered the conversation towards abortion. It was just exhausting. like it's like, okay, Alan.
Right.
Yeah,
Not
so
every-
that's what I was making fun of, and people were like, you're abandoning your post in the culture war. It's like, calm down.
I mean, you can recognize that you're in a culture war, but I mean, what? I mean, if we're going to keep up with the analogy, right, even soldiers have to get shore leave every once in a while.
Yeah, it's
Where
like,
they
sorry,
can't be thinking about the battle. They can just go and, go off and do something else.
I'm not going to support any company that says or does things I don't like. It's like, okay, well, you're going to be in the woods with a PureFlix subscription and eating Chick-fil-A, and that's going to be it for you. All right.
I don't know how you're going to get a PureFix subscription, because what internet provider are you going to get?
There you go. You're going to have to.
And I mean, like I said,
You're going to have PureFlix mail you DVDs.
If that's going to be your standard, again, you can choose, look, I don't want to support this. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to watch this. Like, I don't have a problem with that. If you can make your own standard there. But it's this, if you're going to try to create this universal principle, I'm not going to support people who hate me. Well, I don't know. I mean, you're just going to have to turn it all off.
Yeah. You're going to pay your taxes this year?
Right. I mean, and this is kind of what in part Jesus says, right? About, cutting off your right hand and poking out your eye. The problem is not an external thing. Now again, I'm not saying don't be aware of what you're watching. There's some things that, like, my daughter is not going to watch. There's going to be some things that she's not going to listen to while I have a say to, and there'll be some stuff that we won't do and we won't engage in. As I'm her father. I have the right to do that. But that's not going to be everything. There's going to be a lot of stuff that, she'll watch that'll push up against our values. We can talk about that. I can say, here's our values. Here's where this push up's against it. But I'm not wanting to completely shelter her from everything. There's some things, like I said,
when you become the parent and I just say this because I've seen this multiple times with other kids I grew up with. When you become the parent that everything is about your culture war and all this other stuff, I think that can have the opposite effect a lot of times. I think this can push a child in the other direction. I mean, again, I just imagine you were a kid and you got, like, I didn't go to Disney World when I was a kid. That's crazy expensive. I grew up middle class, but, not rich. And the rich kids went to Disney World because it was way far away and crazy expensive. But like, I just think back to if I was a kid, and I wasn't even a big Disney kid, but if I was promised a Disney World trip and then you tried to tell me, no, we're not going to do it because Disney publicly praised a law we don't like, I'm just gonna be kind of looking at my dad like, you're kind of a dick. I can't back in my head. I'm not. I can't think of any other way to think that. Like that's just gonna like foster a little resentment in the kid. So I definitely feel like sometimes you can push that too far and you can push a kid away. And I've seen enough kids that, like, if you're not reasonable about things, if all you ever do is like everything goes in the trash because everything is the devil, I think that'll have an opposite effect from what you intend.
Well, I mean, it can, and you see this right on the other side when you see the left. Oh, we can't do Chick-fil-A. We can't, whatever. We're gonna walk out on Disney because they gave to this politician. That's made them a whole lot unlikable. I mean, that's really what opened up a lot of people's eyes to seeing just kind of how, again, that this kind of stuff does exist, because on the left too, right? Because for a long time,
Yeah,
it was
look at
like
the
the
background.
right was so culture war focused that people didn't like it, and then they kind of realized, oh wait, the left's the same way, and now you got a lot of people who are like, well, gosh, both sides are really crazy here.
Well, generally, if you like are foaming at the mouth telling somebody they're not allowed to do something, it's going to make people want to do it.
Right.
So it's like, oh, you better not have a chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A because I said so, because you're homophobic if you do. It's like, all right, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A now. You don't have to boss me. Like, that's just a natural reaction people are going to have. I mean,
Yep.
the right tried to do a lot of those sort of boycotts in the 80s and 90s, and all it did was like, hey, you better not buy this video game. It's really violent. And people were like, oh, that sounds cool. I want that video game.
Right. Now, I mean, again, at the same time, pushing something that is good and saying, okay, we're gonna support this, even though it's, whatever, not the best. To me, I don't have a problem with that. If there's a little bit of that culture war, that again, but that has to be kept in balance, right? I'm not gonna buy a phone that is broken and doesn't work half the time because the person tweets on their Twitter about, how they like free speech.
And the other thing, like, I mean, you can't, if you want to win a culture war, you kind of got to make an alternative. You got to have a good alternative. So, like, okay, you're telling me I have to cancel my Disney Plus because of the anti-grooming law. Okay, fine. Well, okay, but I still want to watch TV once in a while. What am I going to watch? Well, you're going to watch Kirk Cameron movies on PureFlix.
Yeah, that's not how you're gonna win.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to go far. Like, you sure I can't just finish watching Moon Knight? Like,
And see, that's one of the weirdest things about, like, I know we're kind of getting into a different direction, but that's one of the weirdest things about the right, is that on the one hand, they will worship authority, but on the other hand, they are horrible to organize.
well, you have sort of two aspects of the right. You have the very, very rigid social conservative aspect, and then you have the, no step on snake libertarian aspect of it. And I mean, sometimes you have both those aspects in the same family. Sometimes one parent is one and one is the other. But I'm not saying there's no overlap, but it's kind of two instincts on the right that are sort of tugging in different directions. And that's kind of how you get a lot of that dichotomy.
I know, it's just, it's weird. I mean, because sometimes, I mean, I'll see it in the same person, though, sometimes. Where, like, on the one hand, like, I'm never gonna wear the mask, and on the other hand, it's like, this person, their word is gospel.
You got a come and take it sticker next to your thin blue line sticker on your truck. Like, who do you think's coming to take it?
It's like, again, we need order, and we need to follow whatever, and then it's like, okay, great. So you want to come to this church event where we're learning how to do this? Nah, man, I'm by myself. Like, wait, what? Like, we're literally having a community event here. Nah, man, I'm not gonna come to that. But man, we need community.
Again, though, part of it, like I said earlier, people need people with different temperaments.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of one of the sad things about how polarized everything is. Because, yeah, when you just isolate yourself or you just surround yourself with everybody that's just like you in temperament and beliefs, you start to get really cringe. There's no other word for it. You kind of just you go nuts. You lose yourself.
Yeah, and like, to me, that's the real tragic thing about where we've kind of gone, both sort of on the left and the right. And I mean, obviously, I lean more right, so I'm going to speak about this from the left just because I've seen it more. But like, like, people on the right, from the evangelical side, right, they can go down the path of, well, we don't need to care about the environment, God's going to take care of it, which is not how you need to think about it, right? The problem is that so when people on the left say that's a dumb way of thinking about it, no, we should take care of the environment, like this is important. That's a good thing. But the problem here is that on the left, now what they've automatically jumped that to is okay, we need to take care of the environment. So what that means is all of this BS, political stuff, you know, and it's like no, that's not taking care of the environment. But people on the right are like, well, we don't want to even give an inch, so we're not even going to say anything about taking care of the environment. It's like, no, we're just not going to care about it because you think that if you say, yes, taking care of the environment is important, well, see, we've given them that point, so now we might as well just give them whatever else that they've jumped for that to mean, all the Paris Climate Accords or whatever. Same thing about the poor, Do I think it's great that the left virtue signals about taking care of the poor? I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean all of these government subsidies. Is it important to care about the poor? Yeah, like I'm glad that that's an important thing. And sometimes, again, life is not just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There's a balance between those two positions. But neither side really seems to sort of hear the merits from the other side. And again, the problem with, at least that I see on the left as well, as those they've taken these things that a lot of people have, but then you've got a lot of this corporate left that, they virtue signal that, but what they really mean is more government spending that basically leads to the poor being poor at the end of the day.
You can get into this thing where like you're so far off in your corner that you really have no perspective of where anyone else is. I mean, you see like leftists right now that they want to cancel the Harry Potter lady because she's too far right.
Right.
Because she thinks girls have a vagina. I read that Julie Rohr's blog a lot, and I know you're no fan of hers, but like the one thing I always laugh at is when people call her a leftist. I'm like, look, there's some cringe blue pill takes of that woman, but like she's a left winger by evangelical standards. All right, let's be real. That's like calling J.K. Rowling a far rightist. It's like, no. It's just you're so far off in one direction. Maybe it appears that way, but have a little perspective here. Whatever you think of those two people, I'm not, putting either one up as like some paragon here, but like those are just two examples that come to mind of like you're sitting here telling me the Harry Potter lady is far right.
Yeah, well, no, she's not. No, she's very much on the left, and of course, again, right. This is where people on the right, they can see that, they can think, oh, she's a right wing person, and then they get upset when it's like, well, wait, why aren't you championing all these positions? Like, because she's not actually on the right. It's just they've gone so far to the left. The furthest right person at an Antifa rally is not a right winger.
No. And the furthest left person at an evangelical church is probably not a left winger. Like, it's probably just not the case.
No, I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, I don't know Julie Rohr, some of her politics, though. I mean, she definitely leans more blue than she wants to lean on, just based off of some of the guests that she's had, like in a positive context. But like having Kyle J. Howard on, that's a pretty left leaning. I mean,
again, I'd say she's very, very blue leaning for someone in evangelical culture.
Well, I think that's just a part of that, though. That's just blue leaning, period. I mean, there's general
culture, like, no, like, come on. Again, this is calling J.K. Rowling a right winger kind of thing. Like,
I don't know. I mean, to me, that's looking at one point of J.K. Rowling and then just defining her. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I agree with you. She's not as left wing as people make her out to be. Like, she's not on the same par as like an AOC or something like that. But she's definitely on. If there's a spectrum here, she's on the left side of it, even if she's more toward the center of it. I would say she's a, leftist center. She's a centrist who leans left, maybe.
I mean,
I don't know.
I just kind of think she's a typical woman. Like, I don't mean to be mean, but like, there's always a collectivism with female politics, right or left. There's always a.
That's true. No, that's true. But that does tend to lean left, though. Women do tend to lean more left.
Anytime you have a group that has woman or mother or family in the title, they're going to be pushing for bigger government, right or left.
Yeah, that's a fair
every
point.
time. Every time, right or left. It's going to somehow be like, I need to be less free because think of the children or think of the poor women or whatever. And it's so that's just I just kind of think I don't know. I there's my based right wing take. Politics is kind of a man's game.
No, I mean I would kind of agree with that. I think that's I mean, no offense. I mean, it's to women, no offense, but it does have to do with some kind of understanding, though. And I think one thing that's been lost, at least with America, is a loss of cost. You know, and you have to be able to evaluate cost from a very objective, unemotional viewpoint. And women, generally speaking, because of their children, have a harder time doing that than a man does.
And that's not to dismiss. I mean, women, hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. I mean, women rule the home. That's just how it is. And a guy could be like, no, I rule the home, and it's like, yeah, that's why all your stuff is tucked away in a little man cave, and the rest of the house is decorated by your wife. Like that, let's be real, okay? Like, but that's just, I mean, that's kind of how it should be. It's kind of how it works better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing of having realms. Yeah, it's understanding sort of how the authority works. I mean, that's again. I mean, there's so much basic stuff it seems like that just people don't know, so it gets twisted. Again, like how authority works, right? Like the fact that it's like, okay, the home is the wife's authority doesn't mean that like, oh, she rules everywhere. It's like, nah, this is her realm. This is where she rules. You know.
I heard a woman say like having a husband's like having an outdoor cat. It's like I love him and I take care of him, but he really can't be in the house that much. You gotta go to work or something.
Nah, well, I mean, there's a truth, and I mean, again, like when it comes to children, like with my wife, I'll, again, I mean, now, you know, she don't tell me what to do, right? But I mean, when it comes to our daughter, though, yeah, I'm a lot more like if she's like, we need to do something, I'm much more inclined to listen to her on that sense. You know, if she's like, well, we need to. Now, again, sometimes it's not always the case. There's a push and there's a pull there. And then there's some stuff though that if I say it, she's much more likely to just go with what I'm saying there. Typically like with finances and that kind of stuff. So there's a natural way that can kind of work out, and it can be healthy. And it's not a one-to-one. It's not a, easy solution. Over, if you look at sort of the whole thing, if she thinks that our daughter's sick, I generally tend to, okay, well, be a little bit, investigate that a little bit more, she's like, hey, let's check her temperature or let's do this. Like, okay, I'm more inclined to do that. Because in a lot of the times, she's right. She's got that insight, the mother's insight.
But yeah, the temperament and the ideas that keep a home and a family running do not keep a country running.
No, they're not the same thing.
Doesn't keep a business running. It's.
And that's, I think, and again, I think that is some of the problem is we're trying to run the country like a home, and it's not. And a lot of businesses try to be run. There's this push to make businesses run like homes, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, like you see, all these companies like, oh, you're our family. It's like, no, I'm here to make money.
And it's the same thing for a church. And then this would be the problem that sort of the establishment right had, is they were trying to make the country run like a church, and they were trying to make businesses run like a church, and it doesn't work that way. The church is a unique organism in some ways that is, again, in some ways you could think of it as your spiritual family, but even there, it's not the same as your family. And the government doesn't need to think of itself, it doesn't need to function the same way that the church has. That's why people have talked about the three different estates. You've got the home, the church, and the state, essentially, the government. These things are different. You can include kind of with that, but maybe not in the case of an authority realm, but, the market. Where you've got the market and then the home and then the church and then the government. And these are the basic sectors that make up society, and each one's have their own sort of rules and how they function. And they can all get along together and function together, but they shouldn't all work the same.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Because, and big problem I see with our government is that it's too busy trying to be our nanny. Right? A lot of times that's for a lot of the more libertarian right people are like, stop being a nanny state. You're trying to be our mommy. You're trying to be our daddy. You don't need to do that.
But Tom, if the government doesn't tell everyone what to do, people might do stuff I don't approve of.
And that's the problem. People have to be okay with that. Yes, people will do things that you don't approve of. And that's why you've got the church to speak on these issues, to say, here's what you should be doing to encourage them, not with force of the state, but, through encouragement and preaching to them to do these things. And this is why the church doesn't need to try to influence the market to try to influence people or try to get the state or vice versa. The state doesn't need to try to influence the church to tell people these things. And of course, the home does that as well, right? The parents raise up the children to do what's right. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that people disapprove of. But, so well. There's within that, right, there's limits that as long as, a country generally abides within those limits, there's a lot of freedom to operate. I'd say in our country, we've gone past those limits in certain areas. And so we're reaping the consequences of that.
I think we just need to give more money to Nick Fuentes, and he'll save America.
Definitely, if we in Baked Alaska, and
yeah,
Ethan
Baked
Ralph.
Alaska, and Ethan Ralph. Ethan Ralph is gonna.
All of these guys, they're going to save the country.
Anybody that hasn't paid attention to it, I mean, and it can be a time sink. Don't get me wrong. So, it's something I suggest you listen to while you're doing something else. But check out the Kino Casino making fun of these guys. And like I said, it could be a time sink. Like these guys can go on for like 5 hours about it. But if you can listen to podcasts at work or something, or while you're doing something else, it's quite interesting. I basically gave up YouTube for Lent, and I just couldn't help it. I ended up like I tried to cut down all of my distractions. I'm like, YouTube was the one thing I wanted to give up, but everything else I was trying to cut back on. Yeah. But like by the end of it, I'm like, no, man, I gotta see what Fuentes is doing now. Yeah.
Well, over the past couple of days, like, because I've not been able to just sit down and really listen, so it's taken me like several days. I've almost gotten through it now. I've been listening to the Porcelain interview that he did with Mr. Medicare on Mersh.
Oh wow, that's something.
Which have you seen that or listened to that?
I really never got the Mersh hate before then. I mean, yeah, Mersh has his issues, but I was like, I never got like why so many. But I listened to that interview, like, okay, I get it a lot more now.
Yeah, I did too. Like the only issue I really had with Mersh was just his laugh. I can't stand his laugh.
But yeah, there's such a pettiness to him. Yeah. Such a, like. I've never seen someone seemingly more motivated to succeed just to spite your enemies. Like, almost like he doesn't want it for any other reason.
Right. I'll show you. And that's not much motivation.
I mean, I get, like, everybody has a little bit of that in them,
Sure.
But, yeah, we're all a little petty. You know what I mean? Like, I think all of us when we're high on the top of the mountain, we kind of hope all our enemies see it, but that's not really the reason we climbed it.
Right.
Like,
no, I mean it can be a motivation, but it doesn't need to be the motivation. That can be one of many different ones. Just
like that was like 5 hours talking about Mersh.
Yeah, like I said, it's taken me, because normally, like, I'll listen to this kind of stuff like if I'm driving, if I'm having to go somewhere. So I've had to listen to it, like, I was able to get through some of it when I was driving back from my parents, but not all of it, because like I could do it like when they're asleep, I could listen to it, but I'm not gonna listen to stuff when they're awake. But just anytime, if I was working somewhere else, or if I didn't have to focus, I could kind of listen to it. But yeah, it's a lot there. It's something else.
But yeah, the Kino Casino is
Is that their most recent one, or is this something that they've...
No, that's PPP and Worski do the Kino Casino, but they've been the ones that have really been covering AF and Ralph.
Yeah.
Like they actually, when they started this show called the Kino Casino, they joked, they were like, we were going to have a different Joker, a different locale every week. But the problem with that is Ralph exists, and Beardson exists, and Nick Fuentes exists, and Baked Alaska exists, and they've just become our show.
Well, now what's going on with Beardson? Because now he is he still on good terms with Matt?
I don't know if he is or not, but I know he's basically like Nick Fuentes, like lieutenant in America First, and Beardson is just he's just sitting in a gamer chair screaming the N word, in his little apartment after his wife left him. Like that's his life.
Oh man, I'm sorry that his wife left. That stinks.
Yeah, I guess she realized, oh, my husband does nothing but sit in a gamer chair and scream the N word all day. Maybe I should get out of here. Like, I don't, and I'm not exaggerating. It's all he does. He sits in a gamer chair and screams the N word and smokes cigarettes and eats Chick-fil-A because he's trad and based, so he eats Chick-fil-A. Like
Of course.
it's unreal. It's
I mean, I remember when when he was on your channel, but I think he was just trolling then. I don't think that was like legitimate. But I remember
I
when he
think
did
he's
that
I
debate with
think he
Forney, and you were
spent
like,
so
"God, this
much
guy's a
time
fool."
he spent so much time like just being this like irony troll or something. Like I think it turned into some Andy Kaufman thing on himself where he doesn't know who he is anymore. I think
Where
he's
does the
just
Beerson
completely
end and the Beardley begin?
yeah, I think he's just completely vanished into an Andy Kaufman act. He's just
Oh
gone.
man, yeah, man. It's interesting, right? Because like again, a lot of this stuff, like most of it, I've known from listening to you. Like you'll send me links or that kind of stuff. Like I'm very much just uh, again, people I've listened to, it's interesting. It's a similar thing with like a lot of the Christian stuff, I guess too. I guess because like again, I'm not really in like the church, like the big evangelical culture. Some of these people, like you meant, like some of them I know, but it's more so like in the Reformed side that I know. I don't know a whole lot of these other people. Um, it's really interesting.
Well, I try to catch a lot of sermons on Christian radio when I'm driving. Like I like it's a good time to try and redeem that time. But the problem is a lot of stuff on Christian radio is not anything you need to be listening to. And even the decent sermons often come from guys that when you scratch past the surface, you're like, okay, this is another guy that's, using using his ministry funds to artificially enhance book sales and stuff like that. Those kind of shady things.
Yeah, see, I guess I'll find pastors that I like, after a while, and I'll go to sermon audio, and that's where I'll be listening to them. So like, because there's about like, and I'll add to it, but I mean, generally speaking, there's like 5 or 10 pastors that I'll typically tend to listen to, or Christian people in general. Like Chris Roseborough from Pirate Christian Radio, I'll listen to him a good bit. He does sermon reviews, and he goes through a lot of the stuff. Jonathan Fisk with Rev TV. I'll
I
listen
found
to
a
him.
channel called Long for Truth One, I think it is. The guy's name is, I think, David Long, but he does a lot of reviews of stuff like sermons and all. And he's been covering the Ark, the what is it? Something.
The Ken Ham arc.
No, no, no. It's some organization of like churches called Ark.
Oh yeah, the Apostolic Reformation Network.
Yeah, and he's been covering that a lot, and I didn't know about that. Like, I actually went to an Ark church briefly
You were
when I
telling
was
me
like
about that.
between churches, and I just kind of thought it was all really stupid and vapid. So I was like, I don't think I want to settle down here, and I moved on. But like, then when he's describing like Ark churches and all, I'm like, that's what all that was.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot, but I remember you mentioning that, and yeah, that stuff's crazy. That's
There's a
just
lot of that kind of big Eva, the evangelical industrial complex stuff going on.
yeah, and you know, again, I guess you can be insulated from it if you don't. I guess you don't have to try but to be insulated from it. But man, it's insane. Um, it's just wow. But anyway, all right. Well, I think we've probably talked this into the ground here. So I mean, I do need to get back to to work
All
on what
right.
I was doing. But thanks for everyone having on. If you're watching in here, let us know. What do you guys think about the America First movement, and what do you guys think about um, just how people can kind of get sucked into this, and what are some ways to avoid that? What have been some times if you
We
want to.
didn't even talk about the Catboy stuff. There's just so much. There's just so much goofy stuff with America First. You can go an hour and not even cover one of the major things.
Yeah, and I mean, I think just keeping your eyes open, right? I mean, and again, I hate to get all Christian on us, right? No, I don't hate to, but I don't want to be cliche, but I mean, just like literally staying in the Word and reading it, and when you realize, like, man, these people don't seem to act like a lot of these people in here,
And you
and
also got to stay grounded in the real world. I mean,
yeah,
you should probably, should probably be out there having a job, and you should be having friends, and you should be going to church. Maybe trying to get a girlfriend. I don't know what else to say. I know that's all Jordan Peterson make your bed stuff, but yeah, go make your bed.
well, I mean, there is wisdom in that, so. But yeah, so just what do you guys think on that front? And that's about it. So, all right, well, thanks as always, Chris, for being on.
Yep.
All right, and guys, hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.